Welcome to your latest monthly update on the COVIDENCE UK study. My name is Adrian Martineau and I'm the Chief Investigator based at Queen Mary, University of London. In our last webinar, I presented some of the highlights of our research over the last year, and then I also asked for your feedback and suggestions regarding what you as a COVIDENCE UK participant would like to see us work on in the year ahead. And I want to say a big thank you to everyone who wrote back to us with really detailed suggestions and comments about our work. And in today's webinar, I really want to summarise what the high-level messages that we got from that feedback before in future webinars, drilling down and looking at specific questions that were raised and dealing with particular research questions that were suggested by you. So the results of our consultation are in, and we received contributions from a total of 129 participants, many of them extremely detailed. So we've got a rich amount of information to assimilate and digest. But let me just give you some high-level indication of the general areas where you, the COVIDENCE UK participants, were interested that we focus our research attention. The most popular subject for future investigation related to face masks with 29 comments, and that was first equal with questions relating to other protective factors, some of which I'll outline shortly. The second most common request for further work related to the effects of booster vaccinations, and the third one just behind related to questions around long COVID. We also received a number of comments on other topics. 15 comments related to vaccine side effects, 13 comments related to factors influencing severity of COVID-19, 8 comments related to COVID-19 and mental health, 6 comments related to outcomes in unvaccinated participants, and 5 comments related to COVID-19 and nutrition. So let me just give you a feel for some of the questions and comments we received on the most popular topics. First, on face masks, one of the most common questions we asked was, should medically vulnerable people still wear a face mask? What's the efficacy of wearing a mask, both for protection and preventing transmission? And which face mask offers the highest level of protection? Specifically, do FFP2 masks make a difference as compared with plain surgical masks or cloth masks? With regard to other protective factors, some of the questions that were asked related to whether or not we should still be using hand sanitizer. How likely is it that they'll catch COVID more than once? And why do some people in a household catch COVID while others in proximity do not? In terms of boosters, the most popular questions related to whether or not there was data supporting when booster vaccines should be given or how doses should be spaced out. There were questions relating to the efficacy of different booster vaccines, and questions asking which vaccine is best for people with long-term health issues. There was also a question regarding whether or not the immune system might be overstimulated by regular boosters. The topic of long COVID prompted many comments and questions, and here are some of the most frequent of them. First of all, there was a lot of interest in risk factors for long COVID. People asked how have the risk and presentation of long COVID changed across variants. We asked what are the various symptoms of long COVID, such as tinnitus, aches, fatigue, an altered sense of taste or smell, and how many people get which ones. We asked when symptoms appear, how long they last, what influences recovery. What are the effects of repeated COVID infections on symptoms and well-being? Can people develop long COVID from a second or third infection? How does vaccination affect risk of and recovery from long COVID? And finally, what therapies or lifestyle changes do people with long COVID find helpful? So you can see from those few slides that we really received a really rich amount of information and suggestions relating to future research topics. And I think the questions can broadly be divided into 3 groups. The first group relate to questions that we've already addressed in the first 12 manuscripts now that we've published from COVIDENCE UK. The second are questions which we ourselves haven't addressed, but which have been well addressed by other investigators. So there's good information on them, just not from our study. And the third question relates to, the third set of questions relate to issues which we ourselves will be well placed to address with new research in the year ahead. Now, obviously, in the space of a 10-minute webinar, I can't answer every single question that we got or consider every single potential research topic. So all I want to do is just illustrate each of these three broad areas with a single question for now. Then in future webinars, we can dig a bit deeper. So first of all, an example of a question that we've already addressed. So we're asked by a number of people, what are the efficacies of different booster vaccines? And this is indeed something that we've looked at. This is the relevant paper. I'm pleased to say it's now in revision with the Lancet group of journals, led by Julia Vivaldi. And what we have here are what we call survival curves, which illustrate the risk of getting breakthrough disease after having had COVID vaccination. Now, the panel on the left shows the risk for different primary courses. So that for most people is 2 doses. For immunosuppressed people, that's 3 doses. In orange of AstraZeneca, in green for Pfizer. What you can see here is that the AstraZeneca line tracks above the Pfizer line, which means that as time elapses after you complete your primary course, you're more likely to get breakthrough disease if you had AstraZeneca for your primary vaccine course than if you had Pfizer. The panel on the right deals with the issue of boosters, which is the specific one which many people asked us. And again, the y-axis, the vertical axis here, shows the proportion of people getting breakthrough disease, whereas the x-axis, the horizontal axis, illustrates the number of weeks after people had their booster dose. What you can see here is that there were 4 potential combinations of primary courses on the left and booster doses on the right, and that 3 of those were broadly comparable, with one of them offering slightly less protection, and that was the combination of AstraZeneca for the primary course followed by a Moderna booster. So the AstraZeneca-Moderna combination seemed to offer slightly less protection than the other 3 potential combinations of primary and booster. But I would highlight that the protection offered by all of the combinations against severe disease was very good. Only a tiny handful of people had disease severe enough to require hospitalization. So although vaccination and boosters are imperfect at preventing new infections, particularly after 6 months, they still offer very good protection against severe disease. What about a question that's already been addressed by others that we were asked about? Well, one of those relates to risk factors for long COVID. And here's an excellent paper by Ellen Thompson and colleagues, just recently published in Nature Communications, which summarises and pools data from 10 longitudinal studies conducted in the UK, looking at risk factors for who gets long COVID. And these risk factors include increasing age, female sex, white ethnic origin, poor pre-pandemic general and mental health, and being overweight. Also, people with asthma were more likely to report getting long COVID after SARS-CoV-2 infection than those without asthma. What about new questions for us to address? Well, here I think is a really rich area from the information you gave us, and it's given us really lots to think about in terms of the direction of travel for us as in terms of our scientific questions and which grants we want to write to raise money so that we can answer the questions that are of importance to you. But let's just take, for example, the question around face masks. I think COVIDENCE UK, particularly due to the fact that we can conduct clinical trials nested within the cohort, is perfectly suited to answering questions around face masks, which are some of the questions that we asked most frequently. And in particular, do FFP2 masks make a difference as compared with surgical masks or cloth masks? And if we had some funding, then we would be in a strong position to conduct a clinical trial to get a really definitive answer to this question, perhaps over the winter ahead. So this is going to be one of the major priorities for us to put grants into major funders to get funding for a trial comparing different types of face masks, which we can conduct within the cohort. So I hope I've given you just a quick flavour of the really detailed and helpful feedback we've received. Bottom line here, I think, is that we received a huge number of really valuable suggestions. For the questions to which we already have answers, either from our own data or from the work of others, I can present those answers in future webinars. And it's really useful for me to know what the burning questions for you as a COVIDENCE UK participant are, so that in the webinar I can focus on what's important to you. I think thirdly, and possibly most importantly in terms of our plans for the future, our plans and grant writing for the year ahead will really be shaped by the suggestions we've received from you in areas where more data is still needed. And we're going to particularly focus on the 3 areas that you've identified as being of highest priority, namely long COVID, masks and boosters. So in closing, I just want to acknowledge the critical help of Sheena Maltby, who collated and received all of your responses, but also a massive thank you to all of you, not just for the valuable feedback we've received, but for your continued participation by completing the monthly questionnaires. Your data continues to be incredibly valuable, and we'll continue to work on it and ensure that the questions we're asking are the ones that are important to you. So that's it for this month, and I look forward to catching up next month. Goodbye for now.